So we get in the Mishnah gestanden that ein Bein Zov Roy Shteli is, the Roy Shteli is the carbon. So he has a nice chart over there where he made like this. You see over here, he wrote that it says over here Zov Pamach, as if you saw a Ziva once, it's the same halach as a Keri. He did one time X, it's just a Keri. It's a regular tumah. That means technically he can go to the mikveh immediately and he's good to go. If it's Zov 2 times, then he needs to count 7 days. If it's Zov 3 times, there's a picture of a sheep that it's not got a shape on the end. If it's 7 days plus a carbon. 7 days plus a carbon. That's the basic build-up. So he starts with this chart, and then he got into the Stam the Mishnah. I mean that's the Mishnah. The Mishnah is saying that the only difference, because in Tumah both of them need to have 7 days. Right? A Zav of 1 day can go to the mikveh right away. Doesn't need 7 days. 2 days needs 7 days. 3 days is 7 days plus a carbon. So that's the whole Mishnah. So fine. And the Gemara gets into Indian Mishkev and Moshev. We're not going to go all the way back, but he's down because I already have the picture. He made a picture of some kid wearing an MDY shirt and sitting on a bed, because this is the tim of Mishkev and Moshev. Mishkev and Moshev is that the Chiddush is that even if it's a stack, he has 4 mattresses. I think 1, 2, 3, 3. Even if you're not touching the bottom, even if the bottom is not getting moved or touched, because he's sitting or laying over it, that's a special timber. That's called. It goes all the way down, and it's called Tivis Mishkev and Moshev, laying and sitting. Fine. So I guess let's just go from anywhere in the bottom. Don't you think there's a kalvachimer that if he's going to have the special tim of sitting on a couch or laying, you don't think that it's also going to need shiva nekim? Says the Gemara. Actually, this proved that. What's the Shemeis Keneged Yoim? So now we're going from a Zav to a woman. We're jumping from a man to a woman. That a woman, what's the Indian? Is that a woman, we spoke about this a little bit with Shalom. Mr. Stefanski got into it also. He says classically, and the way he explained it quickly, is that what we said, you have 7 days of regular expected period time. That is when a woman becomes Tumah, and that's the full niddah. From the 8th day, after 7 days, 8th day and on, for another 11 days, if she gets it then, Stefanski made it clear that the blood looks the same. Don't think it's some kind of different colored blood or something. The blood looks the same, but because it's on the wrong date, so it's considered a inyan of Ziva, and the first time it happens, it's called the Shemeis Yom Keneged Yoim, and she needs to just count 1 clean day the next day, and then basically if it happens 2 or 3 times, then she needs Shiva Nakim. We are Machmer today, in real Hilchos Nid, that's interesting. I don't say Machmer, because then you can think, this is already talking about in the Gemara. The Gemara concludes that today, because we don't know these cheshbonos so much of the 7 and 11, we don't know how to count this, so we do 7 Nakiyim no matter when. Meaning every time a woman gets a real niddah, we're not talking about something that you take to do with a little stain. We're talking about real period. So then we are always machmer for Shiva Nakiyim as if it's basically in the 11 days. But technically, if it would be, we don't do this 7-11 because it would be too confusing. As it is, by the way, it could be confusing enough. So we just we do different 7-11. Yeah, we do slushies. So I was like, Shemeis Yom Keneged Yom Techiach. Shemeis Yom Keneged Yom is going to prove that what it's going to show you Shemetama Mishkev Moshev. What Shemeis Yom Keneged Yom by definition means that she waits 1 clean day. Thank you so much. And she can immediately go. The word shomer means watching, waiting. She waits 1 day, Keneged Yoim, and the next day she goes to mikveh because she only saw once. And she is mitema mishkev Moshe, but she doesn't need shiva nakim because she only needs 1 day. She goes immediately to mikveh. Don't wonder. Only some. The word mizoyvoy from zoyvoy teaches us that only some zoyvoys need to count 7. So some of them need 7 and some of them don't. So that's what we're learning about mizoyvoy. Only some of them. What's the chilik that when it comes to this mezoyvoy, because we used a different mezoyvoy earlier, and we were being marba, we were adding that if somebody sees 2 emissions, then he needs 7 akim. And over here we're saying mezoyvoy, and it's teaching us that when it comes to a carbon, you're excluding somebody that has, right? Because we're saying like this, somebody that has 2 riyas, 7 days, no carbon. 3 riyas, yes, carbon and 7 days.
And
so
this is what we're trying to take.
Right. So but both of them we used a mizoyvoy. The question is how do you to cut the cake the way you're doing it? You're saying that mizoyvoy is telling you yes 7 days for 2 years, but no mizoyvoy for no carbon. How do you? So let's do the words again. You're including that it needs 7 days. That it does not need a carbon. If you would have thought that this other mizoyvoy, which we're using to include 7 days, is actually to come to exclude 7 days, you should not need even 7 days. Then Lish the Krumenai, the Pusik didn't have to say anything at all, and we were just talking about a Zav that saw only 1 day, does not need 7 days, right? We started the chart. The Zav that saws only once does not need to have 7 days, it's only 1 day, just like a regular Balkari. So it didn't have to say anything by the 2 days of, and we would have thought automatically that a 2 days of is just like a 1 day of, they both do not need 7 days. From the fact that it says Mezoyvoy, I'm including that it doesn't need 7 days. I could have thought we should learn out from a Kalvachimer. Kalvachimer Dabi would be that what? That you should need 7 clean days. 1 second. I would have learned out from a Kal V'Chomer that you need 7 days. No, Shemer Yom Keneged Yom. No, I would not know from a Kal V'Chomer that anything that's Matama Mishkev and Meishav needs 7 days. Because look, like we said, Shemer Yom Keneged Yom, a woman that saw once, also is Matama Mishkev evening, but she does not need to have 7 days. Says, I could have thought that we need to have the Indian of Mizoivoy. Mizoivoy means Dafka Mizoivoy, and not from somebody that has Neged Tzeras, which is really going to be a pivot into our next Mishnah, that only somebody that's a Zov needs 7 clean days. In Kain, Lichtef Kulvich Yitter Hazav Lishlik Mizoivoy Lamali. Why do I need to have Mizoivoy? Limit Hazav Al Shtayri is Shatu and Swedish Shiva. It teaches about a Zov who has only 2 emissions that he needs to have 7 Akid. Alright, so we'll get more into tomorrow. Ein by Mitzayra Miskra LeMitzayra Michel. Let's just introduce the concepts. So what the basic is. So a Mitzayra, as we know, the basic process is that he shows up to the Kohen. There's an interesting thing that it has to be verbalized by a Kohen. In fact, the Reb Eli Zozang is in. So he has a Kohen, I think might be that his name is Shmuel. He has a Kohen sitting there. And then, I don't know that Shmuel or whatever the guy's name is, but he was bringing out a point, which is I think why the Olim cracked the smile, because he was joking that the guy only joined the Daf Yomi a month and a half ago. If you would have given him time, he'll be a bigger Talmud Chacham. Now he's not such a Talmud Chacham now because he only joined whatever he calls it, MDY, recently. Bottom line is that his point was that you could have a Kohen that doesn't know anything about Saras, his mushal was he has Reb Chaim Kanievsky sitting next to him. Reb Chaim tells him, this looks like real tzaras. It looks like it has the 2 white hairs. It looks like it has raw flesh. Whatever the klulim that these are parshas, by the way, that even as kids in Chumash, no, I would say, not just speaking for myself, but very few kids have clarity in it. You know, I was the kid that loved Chumash, got the hundreds, but the tzaras and the colors and the white and lighter than the and my Rebbe used to show us the tiles. Look how the lighter that part I saw. The darker colors look like it's more. It's higher than the deeper, even if it's flat. The tiles are actually the same, but it looks like it's raped. The bottom line is that the Chaim Kanievsky could tell him, even if Chaim Kanievsky says it's tzaras, nothing's gonna happen until the Kohen verbalizes it. The Kohen has to go ahead and decide and say.
It's like he's notarizing.
Yeah, it's a certain kind of power. It's a certain kind of notary. Exactly. Yeah, 100%. 100%. It has to be the Kohen. So the way it works is that he goes to the Kohen. Right, so he goes to the Kohen, and the Kohen, basically, if the Kohen looks at it and he can't decide, or because it doesn't really have it, there's a white mark there, but he can't tell him it's perfectly good, but he can't decide. So then he locks him up for a week. A week later, again, obviously food and drink or whatever, and a week later he goes back and he checks, and then it goes one way. Either it could be that it's a problem, it got worse, and he gets another week, and then he goes from being a Mitzayra Mizger to a Mitzayra Michlet. The word Mizger here, Zach, the word Mizger means locked, but he's not Michlet. Michlet means it's achlute, it's decided. So again, he shows up to the Kohen.
Negative.
It's COVID, not sure.
Meaning to say, like,
right.
Pending testing.
It's COVID pending the results.
Right.
Is the first week. That's called Misker, is locked up. And the second.
Isolation, yeah.
Isolation.
Not isolation. How do what they say?
Yeah, when you have to lock yourself up alone. Yeah, and then you have Mitzayra Michlet. Michlet is when he shows up the next week, and there was a change for the worse. Then he gets a Michlet. Then he gets locked away. So what's the difference between these two? Again, there's a huge difference. One guy is only pending. He might be clean and go home at the end of the week. The other guy is getting locked up for a second week. But what is it? Just like all of these missions, there's really a lot of differences. But what's the practical difference? The Teretz is Ela Peria Perima. The difference is between letting his hair grow and ripping his garments. What does that mean? That means that when a person, the first week that he's pending, he just sits in a room, he eats his he's quarantined, but he doesn't have to do anything different. He has his shawarma, he has his food. The second week, once it's already mizger, he's locked up officially. He's already the guy that in the pusik he has to say, "Stay away from me. I'm tumah. Don't come close." And he has to mess his hair. He has to let it grow. No haircuts, and he has to look like a mess and prima. Because he's already an official quarantine. He's already an official matzav that he's decided the mitzvah. The other guy, Michael,
25, he would just wear a face mask and everyone would know.
Face mask, yeah. I mean, and then the Baltimore joke, right? He was I forgot it even already, but something about like Everybody else wears the mask. Over there, everybody wore masks except for the guy, the one I don't have it, whatever. Yep, it's a joke. Fine. So we'll just finish with the second part of the mission over here. Now, what's about getting out? So there's no difference between somebody who becomes Torah from Hezger. What does that mean? The end of that first week, the Kohen told them, I don't know, we quarantine you. And the Kohen comes back. Tur mitoich Hezger means he's Tur. The Kohen comes back the end of that week. Oh, it got better or it didn't get worse. You're good to go home. So that's called Tur mitoich Hezger. He was only Hezger. He was only locked up. Tur mitoich Hechled means that he had to go through the process. He had a positive COVID test, a Metzoyer test. He is Toma. He's called Tur mitoich Hechlet. So what's the practical difference? They both end up at home. What's the difference? In a way, it's a world of a difference. It's almost like ein bein, and then you're telling me it's a massive difference because the guy that just goes home after week 1, he goes home, he walks away scot-free. Nothing happened. He has a get out of jail free card. I mean, he avoided everything. The second guy needs to have the whole thing in Parshas Metzoyer. If you remember, with the 2 birds, they catch 2 birds, they let one go. The Kohen shechts the other one with his finger, and they take the Aizoi, the Shnisoi Laz, the red thread, and the grass. So the Tiglachas, and he has to shave his entire body, every hair off of his body. Just like the Levium had to do in this week's Parsha in Baloislu. Anyways, bottom line is that, so just to explain the words again, and this will end. There's no difference between somebody that just became pure because the Kohen, he's really never became Tumah. It's not like he was really Sufik, and then it's called Tur mitoich Hezger. He's pure because he was only locked up. The Tur mitoich Hechlet to somebody that became pure because it was clearly that he was confined and he needed to have real isolation. He was actually positive. The difference is that he needs to have the bird and the shaving, right? The Tiglachas is the shaving, and the Tzepurim is the birds. Okay, fine.